One, two, 1, 2, and we are live. This is Beat People Podcast 76. And this week we're going to talk about the battle of the standalones. That was catchy, so I think I'd throw it up there. But really what this is about is this week they being Native Instruments announced their Maschine Plus. Is that what they call it? Maschine Plus is a standalone machine. And so we're going to get into the discussion about how that compares to other standalone machines, how it's weird to say things like standalone and dollarless when at one point that's all there was. Anyway, let's get into it. Yo.
Hey, what's up?
Chilling. So we got Travarsi in the place. What's up, Travarsi? It's good to see you.
Good to see you guys too.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
I see you bubbling on the interwebs. I love it. You got a lot going on.
This pandemic, you know.
Yeah, no doubt. Kenneth Flux.
Oh,
high ears.
yeah, man.
What's up, bro?
I'm over here moving my camera around and whatnot, changing settings like right as you start talking to me. So I'm like, wait, which direction am I? Yeah, man. Yeah. I'm nursing what I refer to as an old man hangover.
An old man hangover. Is that just it feels like a hangover, but you haven't been drinking?
Yeah. Well, I was drinking a tiny bit, but I stayed up too late last night, and so like I'm wounded, just from being up too late. It's less about the alcohol, more about just being awake for way too long.
There you go.
When I was young, you could stay up for like 4 days straight and just be like, "Yeah, let's keep getting it." And now I'm like, I want to go to sleep.
O'clock, you're like, oh,
That's enough.
I gotta go.
I have a guilty pleasure, and that is that I'll play on like Friday nights. I'll play Call of Duty with a buddy of mine, and he's on the West Coast and I'm on the East Coast. So usually I play until
You're the
like
one that's
3 in
being
the morning. Yeah, I'm the one who's getting the worst of it. Though he claims that he was up till 3 in the morning as well, but I mean,
He can say that.
anything he's saying is suspect at this moment because he looked totally fine. So, and I'm like, I'm broken.
No doubt. Well, yo, I'm glad we got a chance to get together this week to talk about. I guess you said it best at one point, Ken. This is the worst kept secret of the industry because I've seen people talking about the Maschine Standalone online for a couple years now, and I never knew if it was just talk or if it was kind of like Machine Gang busting shots at MPC Gang. You know what I mean? You never can tell. But what do we have here? We have I should bring it up on the screen. We have the Maschine Plus, and it's supposed to be a standalone machine. And for those that might not know what that is, Maschine has been a controller for software, and now much like the way the MPC or the Force or the X, the One, the Live 2, and all of those they can be controllers for the software, but it can be a machine of its own without being tethered to a computer. So I kind of dig the idea, but I wonder what people who've used the machine, because I'm not a machine user. I bought one, but it was only to customize it for B-Boy Tech Report. And so I'm curious to see what you guys think of this, just the initial thought when this was announced.
You muted Travarsi.
Oh,
okay. Well,
no,
I'll let Travarsi go first because I've got deep thoughts.
You got deep
off the cuff for me. I've had an interesting journey with using Maschine because when the first one came out, I got it and I didn't really vibe with it, and I tried, but it just didn't work for me. And then when the MK, fast forward when the MK3 came out, I'm all about it. I have one. I use it. I've used it to perform, and I thought that in itself was the game changer for them when they stepped up between the two machine controllers. So now this is interesting because the more I move into, I I play with a lot of hybrid setups, and I, use a lot of modular. And now I tend to not use my computer as much. Maybe I'll use iPad, things like that, or hardware, etc.
Mhm.
But it's interesting to me now because it's like, oh, now I can do these same things that I was doing with Maschine. Only now I don't need to worry about setting up my laptop,
Mhm.
clocking it that way through Machines, through the software or through Ableton. And that was always like something I had to worry about when I wanted to play with even just with the Maschine software with my eurorack stuff. So I mean, I pre-ordered it. I put my pre-order
Nice.
in for it. Yeah.
Dope, dope. So that's the interesting thing. I think there's something that's kind of freeing about um not being tethered to a laptop. And I have we were having this discussion on Marco Polo, and someone said, but it's really no different. It's no different than what the controller is, and this kind of thing, the MK3 and all that. I don't know the particulars that way, but when I look at it, just the idea that you don't have to be tethered to a machine, I think that's a huge thing, because I think right now there's this whole push towards. But you know what? Before I get into that, Ken, tell me what your initial kind of guttural reaction was to the standalone machine here.
I feel like I need to preface a couple of
Go
quick
for
things
it.
so that people can understand my perspective. So
Do
I'm
your
gonna
preface and show
do
us your post face.
yeah. Let me let's take this back to here.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'll just show this for a second. Matter of fact, I'll go. Where is it at? This way. There we go. I'm gonna give a little history. Okay. So this is my first machine. All right. And got this back in, I want to say like late 2009. Okay. From there, I complained incessantly. Machine had all sorts of issues back in 1.0 days and 1.1 days. It was half baked to say the least, but it had a lot of potential. Moving forward, I actually started working very closely with Native Instruments. This is this is actually my third unit, because I had other prototypes of these, and these guys, and finally this guy. Now this one I had really pretty much nothing to do with this unit, but MK2, the micros, all that stuff. I got to know the team rather well, like the actual design team and development team. So like I know them, and I know the people behind that stuff, and I know the changes that have happened both internally and externally as far as this sort of thing. So I have a very tight relationship with Maschine. I was a very early adopter, and I think we just lost Corey. And at the same time, I was really just a huge fan of where it was going. Now Kapow is saying, "Fix the stream, guys. This is annoying." You tell me how we can fix the stream. Come on, we don't handle what YouTube does as far as that stuff. I mean,
What's going on?
Anyway, they're saying that it's choppy, but at this point, I think that's why Corey's trying to reboot, but it's streaming to like multiple platforms, so I don't know that that's going to change anything.
Gotcha.
Hopefully it'll just kind of snap to place, but it may, for all I know, it could have something to do with the fires in the area or whatever. So who knows?
Okay.
But point being is as far as these the development of Maschine over the long period of time, I have a lot of just a lot of strong feelings about how the product developed, what promises were there, which ones were kept, which ones weren't, and the long-term user aspect of Maschine, and for instance, the letters that were written to the community from Native Instruments, and then they would kind of backtrack things, and they would change roadmap. Like when it first started going on, they would put out roadmaps and that sort of thing as far as where the development was going on it, what you could expect in the future, that sort of thing. Later on, they would kind of backtrack on that stuff, and things changed around a lot. Then we saw Renaissance drop from Akai. So when the Renaissance dropped from Akai, we got a lot of people saying, you know, oh, this is Akai following what Native Instruments is doing, and that sort of thing. Then progress forward a little while, then you get the MPC X. Well, when the MPC X and Live dropped, my knee-jerk reaction to that was like, wow, like they're wowing people. They're doing things that were
that was a turn.
Unexpected and that were a little bit over the top. So like, the massive touch screen on there, 16 knobs with scribble strips, for each knob, all these extra buttons. Like they really went over the top with it when they did that. And it wasn't just the Renaissance, but standalone. It was going the extra mile. So when I saw this project, and I haven't really, like I said, like since MK3, like I haven't really involved myself with that team for a while, just for various reasons. I was disappointed is the knee-jerk reaction, like extremely disappointed, because to me, when I look at it, I see the bare minimum. I see taking
on
what
Plus.
Yes, I see it as, okay, this is what the MK3 is, which the MK3 is great. Don't get it twisted. I'm not saying that Machine's bad on that, but what I am saying is that when Akai went from controller to standalone, they wowed us. They smacked us over the head with like lots of interesting details, and they took chances. This feels extremely safe to me. Like this feels very restrained. And when you go to a standalone thing, this is not like a standalone vintage MPC or a standalone like the S2400 that I'm working on. This isn't like any of that stuff. These things do more than that, right? Like these things are basically a DAW in a box, really. So with that comes certain challenges and certain aspects of things that you want to be able to handle. The touchscreens on the MPCs are more than a gimmick. Like there is a lot to it. It allows you to have a keyboard to name your samples without having to plug anything in. Because, we could plug in a USB 1 or we could connect up a Bluetooth keyboard, whatever. But this keeps it all in one platform, right? It allows us to have a piano that we can play right on there. Like there's a lot of functionality that's engaged with that. When the Maschine Studio first, really when I first got the prototype for it, my knee-jerk reaction was a little bit of like, oh, really? Like, I thought these were going to be touchscreens. This is back on the Studio, Yeah,
so the interesting thing you're saying, though, is, so I guess I could see that the idea that they're playing it safe and they're not taking chances. But I wonder, though, I'll tell you this. I feel like Akai had to take chances. They had to not just, follow the status quo. They had to do leaps and bounds, because we all know that when Maschine came out,
they were behind. Yeah, for sure.
Akai was so behind, and because of Maschine specifically.
I would agree. I would agree. But to that same point,
they couldn't just step up to the line where Maschine was. They had to go way beyond that. And that's where the MPC Live and the MPC X kind of landed them beyond the status quo to be kind of leaders of the pack.
And so you don't feel like Native Instruments is kind of in that same position now, just reversed?
I do. I definitely think
so. To me, like they needed to smack you in the head with something. Now, the other thing I'll say is I love the form factor being as thin as it is and metal, and I love that aspect of it. But if you're going to make it that thin and that portable, it would have been great to throw the battery in there at that point. You know what I mean? Like that would have been really cool. That being said, I don't scream at it for not having the battery, but to me, it's like for the price point that it's at, to me, it feels like a flagship price point, right?
Word.
And
$99 is that?
And I feel like it's hitting the MPC 1 territory, right? So it's like, if this was your entry, that's a little confusing to me. And I personally really love Machine's workflow. Like, I really do. And I didn't want to go to the MPC for a while, the newer MPCs for a while, because I've used them and I'm very aware of that workflow, and it felt a little stiff to me. Where the Maschine workflow felt more fluid. There's deep underlying issues there, though, like that kept calling me to, like, oh well, you should probably be doing it over here, and that's why I eventually went to a Live, and then I went to a Force. Because the Force is like this happy medium between Maschine, MPC, and Ableton. It's like this kind of weird amalgamation of the three of them. So when I saw this thing, man, like, it screams to me as like this should be like a lower tier version of a Maschine Standalone, and they need to have a flagship. But if you're already pricing it $13.99,
that's it. Yes, that's where you're
what's your flagship going to be? You know.
Right. Well, let's talk about the things that we think are missing it. I mean, there's some people in the comments that are talking about it too. Like Justin Hughes, like, where's the CV? Like, just that's on the Force.
Because that's kind of becoming a standard now on in that sort of category of boxes. And so yeah, they didn't put CV on there. I think sometimes, I honestly think that's one of those chances that Akai took that was kind of surprising. It changed things. It was like, what? They're putting CV on it. I mean, it's crazy. It was crazy then, but now it's kind of becoming a little bit of a standard because they have it on so many of their machines right now. So the thing about that, though, I think it kind of becomes a question of, what do you prefer, like as a user, for individual preference? Would you prefer more CV on the back of the box, or do you just say, I don't know, I'll just treat my modular like a MIDI thing and I'll get a MIDI to CV converter?
Can I cut you guys off?
Yeah.
Because like I and just so that the chat is very aware, we had a discussion like a few days ago about the fact that we were going to be doing this show, and I made it very clear to everybody.
Already that we already have these chats every day before we actually
exactly, and I made sure to tell everybody I'm cutting everybody off today because I got so many thoughts on this damn thing. The CV, surprisingly, is a complete non-issue to me. Like, to me, it's very little of an issue, and I'll tell you why. The main reason for me that this is actually really they did just a few things really right, and one of those things is that you can connect a USB audio interface to this thing to expand your I/O, which means you can connect it to an Expert Sleepers, right? So if you can connect it to an ES8, now you've got all your CV. The issue is that the reactor stuff that it's doing, like Monarch and whatnot, is just reactor player, which means that you don't have complete full access to blocks in there, right? Which is what I would really want. Like, I'd want access to reactor as reactor. Then again, you have to look at the form factor and you say, well, if it had a touchscreen, you could have done that. But now that it doesn't, that's not going to really work. You could have done some really, really groundbreaking cool stuff like that. And they didn't do that. They took a much more conservative approach. So it's like there's these bonuses of being able to expand your I/O with a USB interface, which you can't do on the MPC range. But you're also limited to what's there and how you can use it, So I go back and forth on the CV thing. Is like, you can use MIDI to CV interfaces, and then if you really want CV, you would just throw your ES8 together with it. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I would do.
Well, I think it just goes back to what you were saying earlier, which is, coming in at the position that they're coming in at, we could make a list of all the things. We could easily make a list of all the things that they didn't include that they should have, being at the status that they were already at, is basically the bottom line, right? Like, they should have had a touch screen. Like, things are kind of standard. A touch screen, maybe CV, maybe not. A battery. Some people are mentioning battery. I personally, the battery is not an issue to me. Like you were saying, CV is not an issue to you. Battery is not an issue to me because I use these things to play live, and I would never rely on a battery.
Oh yeah, but you know what you would do? You would love it if a battery was there and your cable got jerked out. No,
Well,
yeah,
my
no, yeah,
cable
it
gets
has a
pooped out, I
locking
got other
cable on it,
problems.
but
Yeah.
then it's
I
got.
got other problems going on if my cable gets.
Hey, well, not really. I mean, I've been in plenty of shows where that's happened. I've seen it happen to Corey.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's true. That was stupid. I hated that moment.
But again, I'm not going to overly harp on that. Like to me, that's like a specialized use case sort of thing. So like that doesn't completely offend me. It's just to me like overall, I kept looking at it like I still don't want to go back to Maschine until I can see that all those awesome synths that they put in there. Yo, how about you give us aftertouch? I'm not even asking for polyphonic aftertouch. I'm asking for aftertouch like literally every other platform can do.
Yeah. So, but I wonder about that though. I think for me, sometimes I don't know. After touching a groove box, I can't say that's bad at all.
Dude, no. Don't even go there. It hosts FM8. You gonna tell me that it's okay to have FM8 without aftertouch? No. If you try to go that route, I'm slapping somebody. It's happening.
Right.
And I told Traversia, I told you I wasn't gonna be hitting people. I lied. I'm smacking everybody.
Nah, what I'm telling you is.
But wait, before you switch the subject, I got to ask about the interface before you breeze over that, because there's somebody in the chat that's saying something as well, but it says but only NI interfaces working. Is that can you?
Oh, I haven't heard that.
I didn't read up on
that
it.
Wouldn't make any sense to me. I need to look into that because I think it's like any class compliant USB interface.
Okay. Because I mean I haven't.
Yeah, it would be actually, they'd have to go out of their way to make that so.
Yeah, that would be kind of odd, but yeah, and you know what? Even if that was the case, that'd still be better than nothing. But I mean, yeah, I don't know. Like I really wish that these boxes had ADAT and USB hosting ability. Like those are the two things that I feel like these things really need, because if you've got ADAT, like you could just walk into a studio, somebody's got an Apollo or whatever, you could just jack into that and you're pretty much good to go. You know what I mean? Like you don't have to reroute anything in the studio, you're good to go. If you've got USB hosting like that, yeah, I can just, unplug somebody's interface from the main computer, plug it into that, good to go. I can sample from everything in the studio, that kind of thing. To me, that's really why I want to see that stuff more than anything else, is that like if I take it and I connect it to my setup right now, I can do that. Now, I've just went and spent like crazy money and set my studio up so that I can do that without having to do that sort of thing now. But if these companies just gave us proper audio interfacing like that, then yeah. And there's really no reason why they can't do it, because
says, I think the flagship will have everything, but it'll be $3,000. And I think them joints gonna get dusty on the shelf if it ever gets to that point.
I don't disagree with them. I think that's probably what's going to end up happening is like if this sells and they agree with the market for it, you're going to see them do a Studio Plus and something to that effect, or maybe even a complete control keyboard plus, something to that effect. Have a whole workstation like that. That would not surprise me in the least. Just given what they're doing, it's just that. If you're going to do these price points and, I want to be wowed, like because it's not that you're not getting a lot for your value. That's not the problem here, right? Because you are getting a lot for your value. You're getting drum synths, you're getting FM8, you're getting Monarch, you're getting, so like you're getting a lot for your value. And I'm not saying that you aren't. I'm saying that given the landscape of what else is out there and how these things are used, there are things that, as consumers, we're going to be wanting now, like that, like it or not, the MPC X raised the bar as far as UI for these things.
It absolutely did. Because that huge, beautiful screen, and it's responsive. And that's something that I think all of us were surprised at when we went to NAMM that year, that the MPC X screen was so responsive, and the CV on the back. And I mean, let's think about that. When it comes to CV, I think there's an opportunity for folks, whoever's making these boxes, and at any rate, to up the level on CV and the things that they can do. You know what I mean? All that extra stuff that could be there that's not really there yet. But I mean, obviously it's CV, and I think it was dope for Akai to put CV on the back of the MPC One. And now the thing is, when I think of MPC One, I feel like the Maschine Plus is more aligned with MPC One than, but I'm sure that's going to be their micro joint. You know what I mean? But yeah, it just seems like it's more aligned with MPC One than an MPC X. So I'm interested to see, because Maschine always, Native Instruments always has their tiers of machines. So we'll see what that comes out to be.
Well,
But,
I had a buddy of mine literally just come by to drop off a stand for me today, and he was like, "Well, he's like, I'm not buying it," and he's a Maschine user. He's like, I'm not doing that. I'm selling Maschine. I'm just gonna stick to Logic for now." And he's been using Logic with an iPad, and like, he's like, I'm doing that because they're not fixing the underlying issues that they've promised for years, and those are the issues. Now there's a big software update coming as far as the arranger and whatnot. So they're going to be having, you can move audio anywhere you want in the timeline and that sort of stuff. They have that whole clips thing that they're doing now. But until they address the other things in there, that they've been promising for years, he's like, I'm out. The other thing that he was saying is that he wants a, like you were saying, like something like a micro, but he wants something small, like almost SP404 size, but with these sorts of features, with this sort of engine in it. He's looking for, slap those circuit boards, which honestly, if you ever open up any of these things, the actual circuit board that runs these things, there's system on a chip or system on a board, whatever it is. And they're really small, he wants something that he can literally throw into a bag. And let's be honest, you can't throw a live into a bag. It doesn't work like that. They're too bulky for like a normal size bag.
Yo, so
What up, Accurate?
What up, Accurate? A couple days ago, I was I noticed that Accurate actually had Maschine Plus, and you posted about it, so I'm sure we could say that. And so I was like, hey, actually, we're doing a show this weekend if you want to jump on. So he had some stuff, his plans got canceled, so I just threw him the link, so he's jumping in. And so, Accurate, it's good to have you on the show, man. We talked about having you on for a long time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
No doubt, no doubt. So tell us what your first thoughts are. And it doesn't have to conflict with any videos that you've done or plan on doing, but just some, what your thoughts are, initial sort of thoughts are on the Maschine Plus.
Well, I've been like a part of the beta testing guys for this, so I've had some insight for a while. And yeah, my first impressions was that I love it. I think it's really cool that they've finally decided to go standalone. To me, that's really, really awesome. It's pretty much like working on the MK3 to a computer, but you don't need the computer. So right now, I feel like there are a few things missing and a few things I would like to see as well. But it's really cool to have it, and that they're going this route. To me, that's just fantastic.
Yeah, I think they're long overdue. And I know, like Ken said earlier in the show, when he was working pretty closely with them, I know that this is some stuff, sort of direction that a lot of people wanted them to go in anyway, especially when the X and the live and all those things dropped.
Yeah.
So I've always heard, though, and this is to, any of you guys, because as you know, I'm not a user, but I've always heard, though, that people typically get to a point with Maschine where you don't have to look at the computer screen anyway. And so a lot of cats have gotten to a point where they're on the interface and they can just move around quick anyway. So this is kind of the next step to that you don't have to be tethered to the actual screen. Does it seem like it needs a battery? Does it seem like that's the next logical step for this? Because I'm hearing some people in the chat that are like, yo, it's a missed opportunity.
I'm going to ask a more pointed question on it. I want to know from Accurate, because I've been aware of this thing for a long time now, right? Long time, actually, surprisingly long. When I first heard about it, I had initial feelings about what I knew the design was going to be. I want to know what your initial feelings were about the design from day one. Like, you know, were there things that you were more excited about than less excited about, and vice versa?
That's a good question, I guess. The first time I heard about this, my brain just started spinning, and I was thinking, like, what's the design going to be? What are they coming up with? What's going to happen? And when I figured out that it was kind of the same exact design as MK3, I thought, like, yeah, that makes sense. I don't really need anything more than what I have in MK3 because I'm so used to working with the MK3. So to me, that's like second nature. So adding something more to it would be like, yeah, it could be hit or miss, you know. In fact, I'm super happy that they haven't put a touchscreen in this one. To me, that's really, really cool. I do enjoy my MPCs and the Force and the Live and the One, sure, and the touchscreen is cool, but it's, you know, my workflow just, to me personally, I'm faster with Maschine because it's not touchscreens. I don't have to look at stuff and, you know, think about what I'm doing like that. Instead, it's all in the fingers and it's all in the muscle memory, and I know this button goes here. So that's one of the design things I was super stoked about. It's not having a touchscreen. So that's for one. Then I would love to see more like individual outputs, sure. And you mentioned CV and gate connections and stuff. I don't know if that's necessary. I kind of agree with you, Ken. But yeah, I think they did the right thing by taking the same design from the MK3. To me, that's, yeah, I don't need anything more.
One of the things that jumped out to me when the rumblings of this stuff was kind of first going on to me was they had done a controller a while back called the Maschine Jam, right? And the Maschine Jam kind of it was a little bit of a sea change for a Maschine because before it was all about, okay, everything works from this controller, right? And then they brought out the Jam. There it is, right? When I saw this, when I had first heard about this, and my initial reaction was, again, getting back to like the wanting to be wowed, wanting to when you walk through the door, have people turning heads, right? My thought was, okay, you did all this work to get Maschine Jam working, right? Which was a significant development. I felt like there was a lot left on the table. And then we see things like the Force and the MPC range, and I'm like, okay, so clearly Akai has some different mindsets going on where they're like testing waters, doing 64 pad layout, and, you know, kind of maneuvering around in that world. I wanted to see Native Instruments kind of take a chance and do something unexpected, whether it be anything to do with extra pads, you know, for 64 pad layout or any other layout. That's, you know, that's different, whatever, because that changes form factor, but there's other things that you could be doing as well. And there's a lot of other technologies out there that haven't fully been capitalized on, like XY sensor pads and that sort of thing, that we've seen with like Cuneo and that sort of stuff. I personally just wanted to see them do something that was unexpected, you know, not the, you know, the things that I see that they did right is that they threw an extra 2 gigabytes of RAM in this thing, which is nice. 4 gigs RAM. And some people gripe about, oh, it's only 4 gigs. Well, you have to understand it's also an embedded system. You're not running, you know, all of Mac, you know, OS X on it. You're not running all of Windows on it.
Right. Exactly.
But people say that kind of stuff, and I think they don't realize that their concern is rooted in computer usage. And this is not a computer, although it's, you know, it's kind of based on that kind of computer system inside of it, but it's not the same kind of architecture and the same kind of flow as a computer would have. And so those specs mean different things in the context of a musical electronic musical instrument. You know what I mean? Like, I think we were talking, and Ken, you brought up a good point. Like, okay, it's 4 gigs. But do we know how it's allocated? We don't know how it's allocated. That part of those extra couple gigs could be allocated towards OS or firmware or something, and or is it more memory that's actually going to make the plugins that they're allowing to work better and more seamlessly? I mean, you got those questions like that, but you're not going to know it till more people get it in their hands and kind of see what's happening. But I think it's weird to assume, oh, 4 gigs, that's it's better. It's not necessarily so. It could be what was needed for that architecture, but not necessarily something that's blowing other things out of the water. And it could be better, but you don't know.
I don't know if this is a good comparison, but on one hand, you have like, just say the smartphone market. You have phones with like 12 gigs of RAM, but you also have like the iPhone, the latest, cheapest one. What's that called? That's like 3 gigs of RAM, I think. And it's way snappier and way more responsive than some stuff that with 12 gigs of RAM. So it's not that the number of RAM, the higher it goes, the better it is necessarily. Of course, there's some truth in that, but I'm saying it's also about what you're saying, how it's allocated, how the device is working with the RAM and what it's doing. Just the fact that you don't have an operating system like you do on your computer, of course, that frees up a lot of RAM. And I can't really see the RAM being an issue in the Maschine Plus. I just can't.
There is one thing that I was hoping for.
What was your experience with using? I mean, I know yours was a prototype, like you said in your video, but did you try to?
No, I got the real one now, and the beta is
Did you? I mean, have you run into any issues with slowing down if you start adding a lot of kits, or have you?
Yeah, I'm making a video and I'm incorporating that part as a part of it. I didn't use any effects at all. I just I loaded up 16 instances of Massive and just played 16 different synths in Massive plus a drum kit with like a drum group in Maschine.
That's dope.
Yeah, but then when I tried to record like a live loop into Maschine from one of the synths, just straight in, that's where it became kind of buggy. So I don't know if that's going to be updated or not, but 16 instances of Massive, a drum group, and a looper track, that kind of reached the limit. At least for now. But I mean, 16 instances.
That's a lot.
That is a lot.
That's a lot. Yeah. It is.
Question in the chat too. I don't want us to breeze over it.
Yeah. Yes. Go for it. Go for it.
Oh no! Someone was asking about the synth parameters. Are you able? I didn't see the previous. Let me scroll back.
Well, it's the same as Maschine. I mean, you can scroll through synth parameters as it is on Maschine. So like all of these effects and synths that are in there are already kind of pre-mapped inside of Maschine, and you can just use the left and right buttons and scroll through the pages and get to all of that stuff right from those knobs. So that stuff is all, interacting in the same way.
That's completely right.
The thing that I kind of was hoping for that admittedly doesn't make complete sense, but so there's 32 gigs flash memory in there. It would have been so dope if like Contact would work in that thing and it could stream direct from the disk off of that. Like that would have been so dope.
Yeah.
To have like full sample library compatibility like that would be crazy. Now, or even streaming direct through. Are those USB ports? They're 2.0. They're not 3.0, right?
Not sure, actually.
Okay. Yeah, because that would be crazy. Like if you could have like a USB 3.0 port with like a SSD plugged into it and you could run, symphonic libraries like that, that would be nuts. But I'm not saying that I'm expecting a standalone box to do that stuff. But again, these are those things that like would kick in a door and you're just like, oh snap, it can do that. Like, because like I have the Iridium on the desk in front of me right now, and one of the things about it that gets me excited is like, oh dude, I can do multi-samples in this plus synthesis and layer them, that kind of stuff. Now granted, you can do your key group stuff in Maschine as well. I keep having to like hold myself back from saying Machina. Like I go back and forth because whenever I would talk with the development teams, it would always be Machina. And then, but it's in America, it's always Maschine. So
let's talk about the software, because I think that's another big thing, right? Some people that may have just heard about this and may not be super into, this space and music, may not really think about like, oh, well, there's software there. So I'm looking at the list here. It has FM8, Massive, Monarch, Reactor, Prism, Contact Factory Selection, Retro Machines, MK2. I mean, a lot of their heavy hitters or most popular softwares are available. And I think that would have been a huge miss if they were not available on the standalone. So that's a big thing. A couple years ago, I wrote an article on B-Boy Tech Report comparing Maschine to the MPC X. And one of the big points that I wanted to make in there is about the comparison of the software at the time, where Native Instruments is obviously a juggernaut in software. You know what I mean? But then that was also before Maschine, I guess, acquired Air, or started in not Maschine, Akai, I guess, acquired Air and started including that stuff in the MPC line. And so to me, that kind of raises their software credibility quite a bit, because those Air plugins were all in Pro Tools. It was standards. Those are high quality things to have in a standalone. So
yeah, sure.
Yeah, I kind of feel like I can't really say one is going to be better than the other unless you're like, yo, forget about what you're talking about. I am a reactor user. I am, you know what I mean? So that's going to change the game for people, I think.
I've always felt that Native Instruments has extremely high quality effects and synths. I like their stuff a lot, but you can't really poo-poo one development team against the next, because they all do really fantastic stuff. So and these days it's not like the 2000 XL days when the reverb sounded like trash and it was like that's all we had. That
reverb was absolutely horrible. I
know, and I love it because it's so bad. But
you have to spend an arm and a leg to get that joint.
When people start pitting those teams against each other, I'm like, yeah, but also keep in mind a lot of these people have been moving in and out of companies. Let's not forget I don't remember if it was an announcement or what, but let's not forget what happened. What was it, back in January or so, when they basically canned a whole development squad over at NI. They laid them all off, and that was pretty brutal. And the thing about that is like, these were not guys who didn't have a lot of experience. Like, these were like I say, like, these guys are kind of like gold in the industry because they have experience, and they got snapped up by other companies really fast too. So the music tech world is kind of fluid in that way. So it's like pointing fingers and saying, oh, these guys don't have the development ability. It's like, man, you don't know who's working there today.
Yeah. And the other thing is too, I think a lot of times people think that because these are top brands in this niche market, that they're huge companies, and they're not huge companies by numbers of employees type of things. I mean, this is often just a couple guys programming, but they're like genius programmers. You know what I mean?
NI's pretty big now. I'll say this: when I first started working with them, it was an extremely small team. I'm talking QA was one or two guys, and then a few of us, external guys helping with that. And then I want to say that the team was really like 4 people or something at that point. Then later on, if you remember when Core 2 got squashed, when they did away with Core 2, they folded that team into the Maschine team, and they basically doubled the size of the team. And then it kind of kept building from there. So like I mean, there's definitely like a small group that are like the main guys, but like as far as that sort of product is concerned, like Native Instruments has put considerable resources into Maschine.
And what do you think about this question here that they have here for MPC? I'm sorry, Accurate. If you want to speak to that, that's fine. That we can go to this question.
No, that's not too important. No.
Okay, cool. So this question is for MPC users. Do you find Maschine's sample manipulation limited? I can't imagine it is. I mean, well,
I like it personally. I like the way you edit and capture samples on Maschine more than I do on any other device, to be honest with you. I find it the fastest I use it for sound design, which usually you would use like a lot of like bulk editing tools. But I actually will manually hand edit a lot of my samples on Maschine, because it's so fast to edit samples. It's so fast to truncate, fade the end. It's so fast to just, do all these processes by hand. which usually if you do a bulk process on, like if you're doing sound design for sample packs and that sort of thing, you want to do a lot of bulk things, but then you still kind of have to go in and make sure everything is right. With Maschine, you kind of don't need to do it bulk so much because you could just fly so fast on it. I find capturing and editing on Maschine just absurdly fast. The only aspect about it that I wish was a lot quicker and more intuitive was how you can go from when I produce on Maschine, what I would always use is what's called sync sampling. That's like my favorite feature in there, where you can basically sample directly to like a 4-bar loop or a 2-bar loop, right, of your project, and then you can drop that in. Where on something like the Force, what grabbed me over to the Force is that I can do the same thing, except I can like keep it moving and stay in my pad setup while I'm doing it and just keep going like that. I find that just a little bit faster on the Force, but the editing is faster and more intuitive on Maschine.
Yeah, I can't disagree at all. I think the sample management and editing and stuff I think Maschine has made that so much easier than ever on anything else before. Just the fact that you're zooming into your waveform to set your start and end points, you're zooming in, and how much you're zoomed in is how sensitive the knobs will be. To me, that's just so much quicker than having the 4 knobs accessible with different types of sensitivity on the MPCs. I've had the MPCs for a good while now, and I'm using them a lot, but that thing never becomes second nature to me. It's so much easier for me to just zoom in and edit my points. It's just so much quicker. So, I mean, to me, that's incredible. The sample and handling, I would say flat out, is better on Maschine than on the MPCs.
One small thing that Maschine does that is just like the shit, and everybody else needs to like get on board with, is the fact that, so you plug in a keyboard, whatever sample is on your pad is all automatically chromatically across your keys. That is such a huge, it's like, it sounds little, but it is massive. It is the biggest thing.
That being a big thing shouldn't even be a big thing. But the problem is that with Akai, that's one of those things that we're still doing like we were doing 20 years ago. It's these legacy things that are hung over in the MPC that slow it down. And that's why I'm really optimistic about where the Force goes in the future, because it's the Force. It's not an MPC. It's not tied down by that baggage anymore. You know what I mean? So I'm like, I really hope you guys are looking at all the things that are done right in other platforms. Octatrack does some cool shit. Maschine does some cool shit. You know what I mean? Like, grab this stuff and like give us that. Like, give us that in that. Than the Force, the Franken machine. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like it is, but it's mad fun. So
without doubt. Nice. So I wonder. Honestly, I think this is what it really comes down to. I think that we're witnessing a paradigm shift in these groove boxes right now. There was a point where everything, it's almost like Standalone became a why, what for, who. Like I literally remember the times that I was on MPC forums a lot, and Maschine came out, and there was different groups all over the place, and I think that was around the time, you were still getting like an MPC 5000. MPC 5000 came around the time when Maschine was starting to skyrocket. And it already had been skyrocketed, but it was like, like they put on a cape at that point.
No, actually, I want to say that dropped around 1.1 or something. So like Maschine still had a lot of issues at the point. Like it's still, I don't think it could truncate at that point, which was crazy. Like when we first came in, dude, you could not edit the start and end point off of your sample. Like you could set start and end points, but you could not truncate.
Well, when the 5000
it's come a long way.
Yes, certainly. When the 5000 came out, I remember that the Maschine was just at a point where you could start importing your MPC programs and stuff into it. And a lot of people's opinion changed at that point, where they're like, yo, I could take my MPC programs and use them on Maschine. And so why do we need standalone? Because I get all the power and all my plugins and all of my this, that, and the other on my computer. That was the thought of the day. And so to see things switch to that space where it's all controllers to a computer and all this power, the marketing of you're only limited by the power of your machine, really, of your computer, really, right? You know what I mean? And now to kind of see us go full circle and this term of DAWless, and you know what I mean? It's a real thing, but it's a weird thing to me because right.
Sorry,
go for it.
You know what I think is kind of sad about that is that the whole DAW world and the whole world that Maschine used to be a part of, being connected to the computer, people has now kind of started to expect that level of stuff. And now when Maschine becomes standalone, you're not getting that amount of stuff. You're not getting everything that you have in your computer. People are still asking me days after the announcement, will it support third-party plugins? And to me, that's such a crazy question to even like demand that. Because
the real thing with that, well,
right?
hold on. The real thing about third-party plugins is what the question shouldn't be is, will it run third-party plugins? The question is will Native Instruments allow other people to develop plugins for their platform? That's
a
the
different question. Yeah.
And that's also the question to Akai. Like, but anybody who's using these, system on board type designs like that, that's, I think, the user base. We all want to see that kind of stuff. We want to see that ability. Now, the problem with that is, of course, that you're dealing with a niche user base, right? You're dealing with a smaller segment of a smaller segment, right? Mm-hmm. So, I don't know if that thing's running Linux or if it's, a Windows embedded or what.
And all that.
But the question is like, okay, so let's just say, and I'm completely speculating here. I'm not I'm not going off of any like inside information on this. Let's say if you have Akai running a Linux-based software, right, and you have Native Instruments running a Linux-based software, how difficult would it be to port from one this Linux platform to this Linux platform to have them working on both? So essentially, you're doubling your user base for the people who are developing these third-party plugins. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So like if Audio Damage wants to come in and say, hey, we're going to let one of our effects or synths run on Akai, right? How hard is it going to be for them to also develop it for Maschine? And then we start seeing, that stuff would populate a whole lot faster if that's the case.
That would be crazy. But I mean, Native Instruments has kind of started doing that a little bit by allowing companies to do these NKS functionality things. So I don't know, but I mean, take for instance a company that are already doing NKS compatible stuff. Mm-hmm. Who says that won't be able to run inside a Maschine at some point? Who says that?
And all that would do is sell their product more. If Arturia puts like V Collection on Maschine Plus, and then you've got like a bunch of Native Instrument stuff, bunch of Arturia stuff, a bunch of whatever, it's like then it gets real hard to deny it. As long as they give it aftertouch. Because I'm not playing my damn synths without aftertouch.
Hold on. Before we go, I got to speak on the aftertouch. I think, Ken, we're a lot of us are synth enthusiasts on this podcast, right? So aftertouch would be something that we would want, but I don't think the average producer even.
No, you're wrong. You're wrong, and I'm not even going to let you go there, dude. No, it is not. It is not a fringe. It's not a fringe use case. It's not something that people aren't used to. This is something that is in every single.
That's not cool. I don't like it.
Every single doll. You don't tell me that you've got an FM synth that can't do aftertouch. Like, walk away. No, I don't want to hear it. I'm not having it.
And the average beatmaker that's sampling don't even know what you're talking about. So anyway,
man, you know what? I disagree.
You can't really disagree with that.
I disagree.
Here's the question up on the screen. Open Lab was not a question; it's a statement. Open Labs did that years ago. Speaking of being able to take a Groovebox or a synth and run all different brands of plugins and VSTs on it. But I think what you got to remember with that, for people that don't remember Open Labs, I wish I had a picture so I could throw it up on it. But the thing you got to remember with that was a PC with drum pads and keys strapped to it in a nice purpose-made box. That was literally a Windows machine in there. That's very different than an embedded system.
They had like a custom OS, but it was like Windows embedded or Windows Millennium or something like that.
Right.
That was like running behind it.
A PC computer sort of thing than what these things are. So I won't say that they don't have the ability, but I also think, initially there's probably quite a bit of consideration given to like, we got to make sure that the foundation of our joint is running with our own stuff before we think about opening it up to third parties and others to do that.
And I'd also say that being Native Instruments in that case would be kind of taking a big risk to let anyone just develop stuff for it, because now Massive is kind of not too CPU hungry, but if you do something different, if you have something like Analog Lab, and that's super, super, heavy on the CPU, that makes Native Instruments product looks worse than it is because it's not optimized. So I think if we're ever going to see that stuff, that's going to be kind of a slow progress up until that point.
Yeah.
All right. I just posed a question in the chat. Okay. So we're going to see what the chat says. All right. Press 1 if you use aftertouch. Press 0 if you don't. Okay. Come at me, bro. Yo, straight up, you're trying to use the same kind of logic that I hear from like guitar pedal companies where they're like, guitar players, you're too stupid to have more than 3 knobs. No, dude.
I'm not telling anybody stupid. I just think that the reason something like that.
Yo, everybody, B-Boy Tech Report called you stupid.
No, this is what I'm saying. Let's be real, man. I know some super talented beat makers that only sample, and they've come to me directly to say like, yo, I don't even think about synths. Like what you be doing is dope, but I never even think about synths.
But it's not just a synth dedicated thing either. I mean, if you're playing symphonic libraries and you want to press down the key to open up your violins a bit, that sort of thing. If you want to add vibrato, like this is not.
It's not. I'm not besmirching aftertouch. I'm just saying that it's not something that many people think about. You know what I mean? And you even started this whole point with FM8. So don't go talking down.
Well, no, I'm just saying like an FM synth especially, like because the way FM works, like aftertouch is like directly related to how you can be expressive with FM. So for you to include FM8, it's like, oh, come on, you're going to put you jackass.
Okay,
I'm just like, to me that's like an extreme point though. It's like that synth right there, it's like almost like a requirement. Like if you put out an FM synth that doesn't have aftertouch, who was it, Mode DX? That's absurd. It's just absurd to me. So
I hate that you giving me work to do, Ken. Now I gotta know. I gotta count these. You could talk amongst yourselves. I'm gonna count these things.
Yeah, you go do that. You know what? And if it comes out wrong from me, I'm still slapping you. I'm tossing Rona right through the neck.
So what is
it? Honestly,
yeah, go for it.
I use a lot of synths as well for stuff, but like, sure, in the FM world, I can see what you're coming from, but I'm totally with Corey here. I mean, come on, who needs aftertouch really? I think it's no. I'm definitely a 0 in this conversation.
Yeah. Well, you're wrong, so that's okay.
Sure,
you can stay wrong.
Yeah, but you're wrong about everything that's green. So come on.
There's that.
Hurtful. I'm a real boy. I have feelings. All right.
Sure.
Travarsi, where do you stand on it?
Ooh. I'm gonna probably say 0, but
oh, you're disgusting. That's only because you're used to touch plates and weirdo Buchla synthesizers and crap.
But I see your point, and I guess maybe that goes back to the whole like, did they add CV? I mean, they didn't even add aftertouch, so why would they add CV?
I hear you.
Right? Like,
well, and the other side of that is just that this is one of those things that like the whole reason Maschine 2.0 was rewritten, like, and 2.0 became 2.0. That was like one of the main reasons they were supposed to be rewriting that engine when it went from 1.82 to 2.0. It was so that they would have the ability to do it. just a little bit of inside information on that. Like, I don't know if it's still because of this, but at the time, the reason why it didn't have the ability to do proper aftertouch inside of Maschine for all these things is because the pads are using it, right? So the pads were using aftertouch for the sensitivity and everything. So, which, by the way, Maschine has the best pads for finger drumming, period. I don't care about any other pads out there. Like, the Maschine pads, to me, are hands down. And matter of fact, I would even go to say the MK2 pads are the best ones, in my personal opinion. Super sensitive, super dynamic, and just excellent. So they did do that right, but yeah, it comes with those issues.
Was saying that, you know, even though she likes the MPC, the pads are too hard for her fingers, which I kind of that's the first time I've heard that. But then I've also messed with some machines out there, like the Rhythm MK1 was the absolute worst thing ever on the fingers. But yeah, I mean, they shouldn't even have pad. They should have just been hard.
I'm not going to discuss those pads.
Yeah. So
don't go there.
At any rate, let's see where we are. So I think what it comes down to is really, this is good. I keep going back to the paradigm shift because I just think this changes things. It's no longer that, you know, there's this sort of hybrid standalone MPC and they kind of have the market share, because I kind of feel like this is just going to be all machines that want to compete are going to go in that direction. And then who knows, another 10 years, we might see a flip all the way around. Now, tethered hybrid with no wires and all kinds of stuff. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah.
Yeah, I just think that I really like that they are going this route a lot. I mean, competition in this kind of realm is really good, I think, in this case.
Oh, I agree.
Say whatever you want about the NPCs and stuff. Just that Maschine is now a competitor to those devices will just bring up the quality of everything. That's what I think for the future.
Other thing that's really cool is just the fact that, like, if you, like, even if you compartmentalize the whole thing, right? Like, if we just say it's just a drum machine, right? And then you take just the drum synths and have that in a box, like, that's dope. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot about this. Like, so, like, I can be negative about a lot of aspects about it, but I can also say, it's still dope. Like, just the fact that it exists is dope. Like, you know, like those drum synths. I mean, what's some other like amazing digital drum synths that we have right now? You know what I mean? Like what was it? The mono machine's gone now, right? Like they don't make that anymore.
I don't think so.
So I mean, like, this is on that level, you know, of those sorts of things. Like the drum synths in Maschine are awesome, and then you add on to that, you could do a kick drum made out of Monarch, whatever. Like, so, like, if you treat it even as just that, like, it's really dope, and you are getting a lot for your money. It's a lot of money for when you look at the competition, but you're still getting a lot for your money.
Yeah, but I think back to that point that I think people's expectations here are crazy because you're used to Maschine MK3. But if you're just thinking about Maschine Plus as its own thing, say that this was like another company that did something similarly good, it would just be amazing. But now you're just comparing it to what you're getting on your Mac or PC with MK3.
Paradigm in itself.
You know, that's not fair. To me, this is a new type of device. As soon as you plug it out of the computer and it's standalone, it's a new device. And to me, it has a lot of really cool things. Just the drums, just the sampler, and just one of the synths would do it for me. I would be able to produce all the stuff that I do on that. But now this is even better. And people are like asking about, is this compatible? Is this compatible? To me, you're kind of asking for too much.
What about do any of you guys have a 3D printer?
No, man.
Because what I want to do is I just want to 3D print like a little box to the bottom to make it a little bit thicker that I can just slide a Mac Mini into for my MK3, and I'm good to go.
Sure, that would work.
I'm good to go. Actually, so that's what St. Joe's been doing lately. Is I think he's using Mac Mini with it, but he's kind of relegated his Maschine usage to a separate Mac it's basically like a sound box for him. Like he uses it kind of standalone in that way, and he's been doing that for a while. And as we kind of like, we're all really fortunate. Let's not sugarcoat it. We all have a lot of gear, a lot of things that would be the center.
Incredible.
We all have different gear that would be the center of most people's studio, right? Like I see on your shelf, you've got an MPC 2000 XL back there. You know, I've got one on the floor here. So like we all have these different devices that we can swap in and out of different places. Having it standalone makes it a lot easier to do that. You know what I mean? That's just being able to like, hey, throw this on the desk, boom, just run 2 outputs and a power cable and I'm good to go. You know?
I have a question for you, Accurate. The expansion packs, do they come with it, or do you still have to buy those separate?
I think it comes with, I'm afraid to say the wrong number here, but it comes with a few different expansions from the get-go, and then you have 2 different vouchers that you can purchase 2 different expansions for yourself and install them in the package when you get them.
Got you. Okay. The reason why I ask is because I know everyone's like, we're talking about the price point. I mean, I think the price point is a little high, but I mean, if you're thinking about the expansion packs and when you buy those, what are they, like $50 a piece?
Yeah.
If you don't get a voucher, they're like, the average price, I think, for the expansions are $50 a piece. So I was just wondering how many additional packs would they put in to kind of compensate for that additional?
It looks like is that 5 on that list? 5 different expansions.
2, 3, yeah, that's 5. Deep Matter, Lilac Glare, Solar Breeze, True School, and Velvet Lounge.
Okay.
Plus so 2 of your own choice.
That's like, what is that? 200 and something bucks right there just to buy those expansion packs.
I mean, that's another thing that we can kind of discuss is the marketing side of all of this is sort of interesting in how Native Instruments chooses to market versus somebody like Akai chooses to market, because we're going to keep going back and forth between the two because they're the really only people in this space, in this market space. And I feel like Native Instruments does an amazing job at marketing their expansion packs and their software and things. And I feel like Akai does a similarly horrible job at it. I really don't feel like Akai markets their expansion packs well at all, yet they have a ton of great packs out there. Like there's a ton of great content.
Overlapping the sound designers.
I think the difference is, though, is that you're talking about a company that is software first and then hardware. I think that Native Instruments is first and foremost a software company. They develop sound design.
I remember sitting down at a dinner with them, and they said that they would never do this. Like they were like, "No, our name is Native Instruments. We'll never do this."
I'm surprised they even came out with this because.
Well, it's interesting that they do come out with this
to make hardware anymore.
And keep in mind, they came out with this after Daniel Harver and Matt went to that board, right? So they are no longer CEO and CTO. They're now on an advisory board for Native Instruments, which is kind of interesting in the timing on that. Though I know that this project had started well before that. It's just interesting that, how that all went.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of like industry things in the background that you can always keep like saying, hey, like, does this influence that? And, kind of.
There's a lot of that. Sure.
Yeah, of course. Because people kind of travel around and go around to these different companies and used to work for them, now work for this one. You know what I mean? There's it's a small industry.
Yeah. And I mean, it's interesting that you bring up the point about the expansions, because right now, I guess a lot of people uses expansions and stuff like that from the start, because a lot of them has a really great amount of good content in them. So just receiving 5 of them from the get-go plus 2 that you can choose from yourself. I think it's a few different, maybe 1 or a few expansions are not compatible in standalone mode, but I think it's 1 because reasons.
It's got a different synth, I think, in it too. Like some of them were using what was the other synth? There was another synth that I think isn't present.
I think one of them used Rex files.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, the older ones did, because I remember I did an expansion, and it was we had done Rex stuff, like the early stuff, the 1 point like pre, I want to say like 1.62, that stuff. Yeah, we were doing Rex stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think Rex might be a part of the issue, but I'm not sure.
That's interesting.
but it's a lot of content. You can't say otherwise. I mean, we don't know what's going to come in the future either, but right off the bat, when you unbox it, there's a lot of content. I mean, as I said in my stress test thing, just to be able to load up 16 massive instances, to me, that's more than I will use for most of my projects.
Right.
I got a question. There's two questions I want to think about. This person says, can he stick a USB hub on there and control of his external sense? How's the USB to MIDI thing? Because I know obviously you could plug a audio interface into the USB on the back of the Maschine Plus. But
Machine's always been good with
handling the MIDI USB. Like you can throw a hub with a bunch of desktop synths on it, and it starts to see all that stuff. Is the USB to MIDI thing working well?
Haven't gotten around to try it yet, but I am gonna. I have this small MIDI. Yeah, what you're talking about. Yeah. I haven't tried it at all, but I can't speak on that. Sorry.
Well, cool. That's all good. We'll know soon enough. The other thing that I wanted to mention too is what a couple people are saying is so with regard to expansion packs that we already own. Right, that's one of the things, and there's more to the question. It'd be downloaded to the Plus, or do they have to be specific packs? And I think you addressed that by saying there's just a couple that are not compatible.
Yeah, and I mean, what's cool? I saw someone asking if you could install expansions and stuff from an external hard drive. I don't know that yet, but what's really cool here, I have good Wi-Fi at home, so I'm just logging into my Native Instruments account on the machine itself, and it downloads everything from the servers.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it's all standalone.
That's dope. So that for MPC users, that's equivalent to the Splice integration and the Force MPC line, and that's just dope that you don't have to connect to a computer. You can just log in right from the actual Groovebox and get your content. It's beautiful. I think that's these are the kind of things that are going to become standards of operation.
Yeah, I mean, you need a computer you need to hook it up once on Wi-Fi to do the activation thing and to get your basic content in there, and then you don't have to be tethered to Wi-Fi at all. You don't need anything. So I mean, running a complete studio with this one as like the main hub without a computer and still getting new sounds and updates and expansions and stuff, as long as you have Wi-Fi, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, no doubt. Well,
rolling projects back and forth, like say you're working on something on your desktop, and now you get this standalone. If the things that are within your old project are compatible, can you put that project into?
That's also something I haven't really tested out yet, but it will become an issue to have stuff like things inside of your Maschine project on your computer that you can't run in the Maschine Plus, because that has to be like frozen, and whatever MIDI information you have, it has to be frozen down to audio, and then you use that samples or whatever in Maschine Plus. But if you're just using the stuff that's compatible with Maschine Plus right now, using the same project shouldn't be an issue at all. That's the whole purpose of it. You're supposed to be able to use it standalone mode and then hook it up to the computer if you choose to.
Okay, that's good.
This is an interesting question, and we're just about over an hour, so we're going to end it after this and kind of wrap things up. But this is an interesting question. I guess he's saying like, hey, whatever it is, the Maschine Plus is what it is. But if we had to make a price point for it, what do we think it would be outside of its actual $13.99 price point? That's tough for me. I do think $13.99 is expensive. But then again, it's kind of hard for me to say because I'm not necessarily a Maschine guy. I would probably say $9.99.
I'm in the same boat.
What I think that's what I think it would have hit the market at. So
I would say $8.99 to $9.99. Yeah, I'd be in that same boat. And part of that is because there's a thing where you kind of, if you have a directly competing product and you've got the kind of software suite that Native Instruments has and the name that Native Instruments has, they can kind of command a certain premium to make, like, even with their competitor being there and being strong, you can say, okay, we're going to come in a little bit higher, maybe a few less features as far as like actual hardware IO, right? And hardware things that are going on. but we're going to price it a little bit premium to them to kind of like make the competition be like, oh, okay. Like, you know, make the purchasers who are either loosely aware or whatever kind of perceive it as more a slightly higher tier than whatever, you know, like I wouldn't price it at MPC 1 level because it has full size pads. It's got this massive software suite that goes with it. And they're kind of stepping in that platform. But I also wouldn't price it at MPC X because I do look at this thing and I'm like, what's going to happen with the Studio Plus? Because I feel like there's room for this platform to get more interesting and to do more like paradigm shifting things. Like I feel like there's room for evolution there, you know?
And then so you got the whole thing of when things first come out, when some like for when Akai first dropped a standalone, a hybrid, it was more pricey than they typically, or at least at that moment, it felt more pricey than it should have been. And then as the product line fills out, you start to see the tiers in it. So I think right now we haven't seen what the tiers are going to look like and what the tier just below that is going to look like and the tier just above that is going to look like. But I would almost say you guarantee there's going to be tiers like that, just judging from Maschine's history of things.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Cool. So, I want to thank everybody for jumping on the show. And Accurate, it's good to have you on for the first time. And I know we've talked about this for a long time. This seems like it just kind of came together well. So I appreciate you for jumping on at the last minute, bro. And
thank you, man.
Yeah, no doubt.
It's my pleasure.
No doubt. And everybody keep an eye out on Accurate's channel because I know a lot of the questions that you asked that we didn't get to will probably be answered over time on his channel as he starts to experiment and use the thing. And then, as people start to get these, you'll have all those answers.
That's absolutely right. I'm gonna try to address as many questions as possible in the future, but there are a lot of questions and a lot of stuff to like try to nail down,
Yeah.
And if you guys aren't aware of his channel, definitely go check it out because like it's not just this content about this product, but like, dude, he's got a lot of dope stuff up there. So yeah, check it out.
Yep.
Thank you.
And Varsity, it's always good to have you on. It's always good when we get a chance to chat it up. And so thanks for coming by. Anything you want to drop on people before we get out of here? I know you got a lot going on.
Ooh, I know. Well, I have Fader's Up next week. My Fader's Up, and my special guest is Frey, Daughters of Drexia. So that should be dope. She's going to do like a live. We have her performance, and then we're going to do like a breakdown of her case and why she picked what she picked to play and perform. So it should be interesting.
Dope. I'm looking forward to that too. Frey is dope. And Ken, what about you, man? Before we get out.
I don't know, man. I'm doing it. I'm just working nonstop. I don't even know.
Just close the damn door and get out.
Honestly, like at this point, I'm just like my head's down. I'm focused. I'm getting stuff done, and it's a lot of stuff that I can't talk about yet. But when I can, it'll be cool, and and then people will cry, and say, oh yeah. I don't know. Oh man, just real quick, I want to say shout out to the dude the other day. Like I was sitting in a parking lot for like a while and I had nothing to do. And this dude was trying to troll on the S2400 group and I just went in. Like I went all the way in. And I was just like, yesterday, man, it was one of those days where you just want to just like let off. Cause usually I try to stay restrained on there, but man, I went all the way in on this dude. It was so much fun. So thank you for that.
No doubt.
I don't believe you when you try to stay restrained, Ken.
I tried to.
Well, his restraint is another level, right? That would be one of us blowing up. Right. So, I want to say, thanks. We're going to see you next go round. And there's some real exciting stuff coming up soon. And somebody said in here that we should do a teenage engineering show. So I'm going to go ahead and plan that out. And we're going to do
somebody send me an OP1, please.
I'll send you a piece of paper with
or whatever this new magic trick is that they're talking about.
That's nothing. I'm sure that's nothing.
Okay, well,
no doubt. So thanks for coming through, and we're gonna call it one. This has been a good time. I appreciate everybody and for stopping by. So on that note, we shall say peace.